So one of the best things about technology and how it's progressed is that it's sort of now made a lot of things like your video production and making your own music and all that more accessible to the everyday person, where before it used to be only reserved for professionals and people had to go to things like recording studios or publishing houses. And one of the great things to come out of this entire wave is things like podcasting. So now anybody with a microphone, with some sort of audio interface, a computer, just create a podcast and suddenly it's available to anyone around the world. Now, even with podcasting, as recently as maybe a couple of years ago, you would still need some sort of professional equipment. You would still need a proper audio console. You would need some really good microphones. You need a proper place to shoot. But a lot of it has changed, and one of the best things now is you can get something like this. All right, so this is the Zoom P4. So this is designed specifically for podcasting. So the P4, or specifically the PodTrak P4, is designed and made by a company called Zoom. No, not that Zoom, this Zoom. So if you're not familiar with this particular company called Zoom, they make all sorts of digital interfaces and amplifiers and all that for audio. So you might be wondering, like, if they already make all sorts of digital interfaces, why do they need something specifically for podcasting? Well, we'll get to that in a bit, but before that I want to talk about the unboxing, and it's going to be a very quick one because you get the box like this, and yeah, that's all you get. You get your documentation. You get that black sort of, I don't know what material that bag is, something like this. And that's it. You don't get any extra audio cables. You don't get any extra adapters. I kind of wish Zoom added that in, but right now, yeah, that's all you get. But I think one of the reasons why they don't is because they want to make it as affordable to as many people as possible. So let's talk about some of the features of the PodTrak P4. Now, first of all, you get 4 XLR inputs. So if you look over here, you have 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if you're not familiar with XLR is a professional grade input and output for microphones. Now, if you look at these knobs here, these are individual mic sensitivity or gain adjusters for each of the individual XLR inputs, which is great. If you look here, the switch, now it looks a bit different for input 3 and 4, but for 1 and 2, basically you get a mic input and then you get this with a lightning. This icon is basically for your normal dynamic microphones that don't require phantom power. This one is, if you look at like a little lightning here, is to show that if your mic needs phantom power, like for example, if you're using a condenser mic, not a dynamic mic, just switch this on, it will provide power to that microphone. Now we'll talk about the other icons on input 3 and 4 in a little bit, but you also get 4 individual buttons to mute the individual tracks. Again, another really great feature. You have this ABCD buttons. Now these are sound pads. So what this do is that if, let's say for example, you have a podcast and in your podcast you've got like intro music, you've got outro music, or any other specific sound effects that you'd like to put in that you usually do in post-production, now you can actually do it on the fly. So Zoom already has some individual sound effects and little like snippets of music that you can use. They're royalty free, so you can use them for your podcast. But if you have your own, you can actually plug this in to your computer and copy your own in. And this knob over here, this is actually the volume control for these sound effects, so you can use that as well. So, and then over here, this button obviously is to control your menu. You got your play and stop button plus a record. So yes, this also acts as an audio recorder. All right, so how it records is over here, you have an SD card slot here. And one thing I find is a little hard to open. But yeah, once you get it out, you have an SD card here. It supports up to 512, if I'm not mistaken. We have these 2 other USB port type C's as well, DC 5 volts plus this with the USB logo. We'll talk about that in a bit. All right, so you saw 4 individual volume controls here. Now you've got another 4 here. So this is kind of what sets this apart. One of the many reasons that this sets apart from its usual audio interfaces like this. So this is the Zoom H8, and I actually bought this with my own money just a few months ago actually. And I bought this because number 1, it supports 6 inputs. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It also has an extension here where you can actually plug in what Zoom has, like expandable capsule. So I can actually add one that has another 2 more microphones, so I can get a total of 8. Now this also has a touchscreen over here. This one is not touchscreen. And you also have things like podcasting features. You also have the sound bank here. And overall, a really, really great product. First of all, this costs almost twice the price of this one, all right? We'll talk about the price of this in a little bit. And number 2, this, in terms of audio output, now this also has an SD card slot over here for you to record your podcast or any audio recording. You can even record an entire band with this, with the amount of inputs that you have, but you only get one line out, you get one headphone out. That's it. This is how the PodTrak P4 shines. Now, if let's say you've got multiple people in your podcast, or more than 2, even 4, like for example, you got 4 and you got all 4 plugged in, right? Now, they would all have their headphones on. They would want to hear themselves. Sometimes they would want to hear other people as well. So this allows you to have 4 individual headphone outputs and 4 individual volume controls. So you can control each one individually. Now, this is already shaping up to be an amazing product, but there are more features, right? Now, over here, all right, so you see there are 2 individual USB-C ports, one that says DC 5V and one with the normal USB logo. Now, the difference between the two is that this one actually powers the PodTrak P4. So in terms of power, you get 2 options. One is you can use your normal AA batteries, which is great. And 2, you can actually plug it into like a power bank, or if you have a wall socket charger with a USB Type-C port, you can plug it in and power your device as well. Now over here, you have 2, what looks like 2 3.5mm ports. Now one of them is the one over here. This one is actually a little bit smaller. So another feature that sets the PodTrak P4 apart from another device, like for example this Zoom H8, is that you have a really easy and seamless way to connect someone remotely. So if you look at input 3 and 4, so 3 has 3 switches, whereas this one has just 2, right? So you've got your normal dynamic microphone, you have your phantom power option, and you have this, which is a logo of like a smartphone. So what this allows you to do is that if you switch it here, you can either plug in a 3.5mm port here to your phone. It has to be a TRRS, so usually your combo jack when you got like 2 lines, that's called TRRS. Or you can use Zoom's own wireless accessory where you plug that in and you connect the other to your phone, or or like some other device like a PC, and you can actually remote and send audio wirelessly. But if you don't have that, you can still plug your 3.5mm combo jack over here, plug it to the phone. So what that does is it sends the mic or the person speaking from the phone over to the P4, all right? And all of us who's plugged in can hear it on our headphones, and when we speak, it's sent out back to the phone and to that person calling remotely. Everything done here, you don't have to plug in any additional cables. And the other way actually is through this. So this is another USB Type-C port. Like I mentioned, now if you look at input number 4, you have the third one here with also that USB logo. Now how that works is if you plug this into your computer, all right, it immediately turns this into a full audio interface. So what you can do is, let's say you got somebody joining in as a guest via Zoom, all right? Not this Zoom as in the actual Zoom video conference, all right? So you plug this into your computer, have Zoom on the computer. So it will actually send the audio via the USB to the device. Everyone who's physically around here can hear on the headphones, and when we talk on the mic, that mic signal is also sent to Zoom. Absolutely fantastic. It also has what you call a mix minus. So that means that it doesn't send, for example, let's say I've got someone on Zoom, all right? So when they speak, it doesn't send that particular voice back to them. So you don't like, if let's say you're on Zoom, you don't get yourself back in, which can be quite distracting. All right, now a couple of really good features that this also has sort of built into the system is you have a built-in low cut filter as well as a limiter. Now, if you look here, if you go to the menu, you have 2 here, low cut and a limiter. So what a low cut filter does is you can adjust which mic, and it's all turned on by default. So you can see all the mic inputs I have it already on. So what that does is it cuts out certain frequencies in the lower range, so you don't get like the sort of like a low, airy or rumbling sound, which is quite common on a lot of podcasts actually. So this is a really good help. Now the other one is the limiter. So what the limiter does is also turned on by default, is that if let's say someone during the podcast suddenly laughs really loud, or or just shouts, or for whatever reason gets really loud to the point that the level is peaking or it starts to distort, a limiter stops it from going over a certain threshold, so you don't get distorted audio. Also a really great feature. Okay, now talking about the price of the Zoom PodTrak P4, this comes in at about 300 Singapore dollars, so like about half of the Zoom H8, which comes in at just under $600. All right, now whether we would actually recommend this, now I'm gonna do things a little differently here. I'm actually going to do a full podcast, all right? So I'm gonna get my buddies who are actually on the way here right now. We've got Tiru from Random Review Squad. We've also got Sean Ko from the YouTube channel of the same name. So we are actually gonna do an actual podcast specifically talking about the Zoom PodTrak P4. And towards the end of that podcast, we are gonna talk about what we think about this, and really give our recommendations. So to find out whether I would recommend this or not, go check out that podcast. I'll put a link to the podcast below once it's up. But yeah, that's all for now. Thank you so much guys for watching. I'm JP. I'll see you real soon.